Alright, Fernando Alonso here, out of car racing and being from Spain and that. Whenever I'm looking for a good classic car, I go to carandclassic.com. They've got over 35,000 cars and bikes for sale at any given time, and now they do online auctions with no buyer's fees. Personally, I've got my eyes peeled for a tidy Talbot Horizon. Aye, aye, aye.
Smith & Sniff is sponsored by Car and Classic.
Yeah, I do know Lewis Hamilton. He thinks I'm a knob.
I'm Richard Porter.
I'm Johnny Smith.
And this is Smith & Sniff, a podcast in which two friends talk about cars and many other things.
Guys, listen.
Look.
Serious question. Have you ever really listened to the sound a donkey makes? Like, really listened? Properly listened to the noises?
They are they a sort of... It's like a sort of hee-haw, isn't it, rather than an eeyore? Because they're quite aggressive.
Yeah,
it's all teethy, isn't it? It's very teethy.
It is teethy.
Teethy and... or is it the other way around?
No, it is like it's like an aggressive wheeze, like someone who's having quite a bad allergic reaction to some food or respiratory issues.
Wait, he's having shellfish. You know he's not allowed.
Yeah, it is. There is a bit of that, but it's really loud, which you knew, but it's. I think there's an exhale noise and there's an intake noise, and they're both quite. They're quite hardcore.
A donkey's two-stroke. Is it just? It's just an in and an out.
I think it could be. They've got an inlet and an exhaust valves, definitely. But they do a friendly kind of sigh version. And then they do a really shrill, quite scary, I think.
Yeah.
And you're probably wondering why are we talking about sort of donkeys in Inhale Exhale?
Because we're Britain's biggest car podcast, Johnny, that's why.
Well, the reasons...
All cars, all of the time.
The reasons of thus. I got fed some of these... I got fed a donkey video on Instagram, and I wasn't searching for donkey videos. I hadn't got any previous history of donkey videos. Please don't go down that road.
But now you've watched the donkey video, you fool. You'll get loads of donkey videos served in your suggestions.
Oh, yeah.
Like that time when I just seem to get endless maritime disaster videos for no apparent reason, except maybe I watched a canal boat crashing once.
Endless maritime crash videos. Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah,
they've gone away now.
Well, I'm probably going to get fed a lot of shrill donkey noises.
Dinster, your leading source of donkey-based social media.
Oh gosh. So the reason why I was watching this and I put it down and I was washing up, and you know when you leave your phone running and you're doing something else and it will just keep playing the same video over and over again until you lock the phone or get rid. And I guess I had wet hands and stuff. I just didn't bother going back to my phone. So I heard this same soundtrack, and what it was a donkey that hadn't seen the little girl that brought it up as an orphaned foal for many years, and it was really pleased to see her. But the sound, I thought, was quite akin to a turbocharged car with a dump valve. It really is quite, because you get the intake snort and then you get the blow and then you get the back end. And I thought, and especially if you're a bit fluttery on the gas, which people with those sorts of dump valves tend to be because they'd like to celebrate the fact they fitted the component. I just started hearing this and I couldn't unhear it, and I couldn't stop my phone because I had wet, suddy hands. And I thought it got me thinking. It's a bit like, drift cars are mostly turboed, and I do like watching POV drift videos just to watch the footwork, frankly. The foot and the handwork. Because anyone at the top of their game as an athlete or a talented person, it's just a joy to see how they do what they do. So I always enjoy watching that.
People.
Yeah, but of course on a drift, when you sort of, sometimes you'll over initiate into a corner So
over-initiate.
Over-initiate, I think. I don't know if that's the actual term they use, but you initiate the drift by unsettling the car, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you have to catch it and then hold it. And so when you've over-initiated, sometimes the car's maybe gone a little bit beyond what it should have done, and you're still carrying a lot of speed. So they're hard on the handbrake, so they're dabbing the wand, but they're not using the throttle. Sometimes they'll be totally off the throttle for seconds. And then they're back on the throttle. But the reason why I'm saying this is because they'll modulate the throttle. They don't really leave the gas down hard. This is not a burnout.
No.
This is so you'll get that flutter, gas off, and it does sound like a donkey because donkeys are it does sound quite aggressive sometimes.
Oh, totally.
A little bit
aggressive,
scary. I think they're quite a daunting sounding animal.
I mean, in many
a bit
ways,
like a goose. Goose is quite daunting.
Geese are definitely daunting.
I've had geese all around my office in the last few weeks, and I'm a bit scared to go out. If I go out to one of my cars to get, I don't know, I've left something in the boot. It's like I've got goose.
By geese.
I've got goose mafia outside. I've got like ghetto geese. And do you know what they do? Do you know what they do? They go down really low with the neck and the head, really low.
With where it looks like an S-bend from the back of a sink in their neck. When they do that, you're in trouble.
They go down exactly like that. They got the S-bend neck. The head is really low to the ground. Like,
really
when a Concorde comes down to land and it tilts
it's exactly
its nose.
like that, isn't it?
It tilts the nose.
Yes.
I said, or tilted, because past tense, because it doesn't do it anymore. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does that, and and it starts to hiss, and you think, I'm not going to my car. I'm not.
No.
This thing's going to win. I'm leaving.
So do you basically live in your office now because you can't get out?
Oh, yeah. I needed to go home for an important appointment. I missed my children's sports day.
Just have to get Deliveroo and let the moped guy into the office. Just keep moving, go. Right, now you're trapped here. I've got 6 delivery riders in my office now. They live with me.
Well, what I've done is I've sent a text to no name full suspension bike guy, and I've said I'm going to pay you to be a decoy. Okay, I can get 2 pouches of drum, and all you've got to do is you've got a 12 gear wheelie past the office, really close to the sort of the low necked goose that's angry.
Oh,
and it will follow you.
Flipping heck! I think I've seen the local no name full suspension mountain bike guy in my city.
No.
Yeah, I was in the centre of Bath the other day, and this guy. Now, the only thing was, it wasn't full suspension, but
shit.
It was absolutely unbranded. there wasn't a sticker or decal on this thing, and I suspect. No, I couldn't. I was in a car. I couldn't hear. I suspect the chain was religiously unoiled.
Oh, absolutely.
It looked like it had been fished from a canal, this thing. It was absolutely ruined bike. But also...
He'd left it out in the rain, and he'd accidentally tipped a tin of brine over the chain set just before going into town.
But honestly, this bloke looked like he lived on rolled cigarettes and Jaffa cakes. He was incredibly hollow cheeked and sort of flaxen of hair. And I was like, there he is. There's the guy. Every town's got one. There's ours.
Every town does have one. How do we, like Avengers Assemble, how do you get them all into one place for a race?
What, like in that Olympic velodrome in East London?
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. If you just said, we will pay your travel. When you get there, there will be supermarket cider and there will be rollies available.
Yes. Oh yeah, you've got to have... I don't know, a litre? Is a litre too much of White Lightning or similar?
No, I don't think it's too much. I'd say 1.5 is probably about the
bloody hell,
about the standard.
Right. Before you set off, now there's certain other conditions in the race, such as you must stop at some point of your choosing within, I don't know, whatever it is, 30 laps, and
30
roll and smoke a cigarette. 30.
No, you do it while you're riding.
Much?
You're doing it while you're doing no-handed.
Oh, but you've got to stop to roll it, and then, so it is a test of skill and speed, and then you've got to set off smoking it. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
What about, have you got to have a bag of cans on the handlebars?
Yes, you can choose. You either balance the cans just in their 4-ring pull or their 6-ring pull. 6-ring hoop, whatever plastic thing, or you have a really slack, thin, possibly dangerous bag that they're in, and that could break at any moment.
Yeah, definitely.
And those are the risks that you take as the athlete.
And I suppose the winner gets a new canal barge to live on.
Yeah, the winner gets a new narrowboat and a cleaner. And
I don't know, it's because I live in the West Country now, but in the past week I've met 2 people who live on narrowboats.
Well, just remember, the West Country, I've said this in previous casts, having dwelt there my early years, the New Age traveller thing was prevalent.
Yeah.
So I think it's a continuation of the New Age traveller type of person. They don't want to be anchored down to a specific place. The good thing about a narrowboat is theoretically you can travel around a lot. Although the reality is the Perkins diesel engine probably hasn't been started in 2 years, and you'd be damned if it's going to run this week. So
it's got basically toffee in the fuel line.
Exactly.
So a harsh winter.
So you end up just getting all your mates round, and you pull it on a rope down the river 50 metres because you have to get out of the marina because there's been a problem. I don't know what that would be. So yeah,
I do know. I was going to say, because I lived in London for 20 years and never once met somebody who lived on a narrowboat. I've been here less than a year, and I've, in the space of a week, met 2 people. But I realised I did know someone who briefly lived not on a narrowboat, but on like one of those converted. What would it have been? I don't know.
Might be a Dutch barge. Would be a wider one. Dutch one.
I guess it would have been. Yes, that's it. And it was in a nice spot on the River Thames.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how idyllic. But actually, he explained that it wasn't really, because it was chuffing cold when the weather was cold.
Yes.
And an overpowering smell of diesel at times.
Oh, gosh, there's 2 things. You're not selling it to me with those 2 things.
Not at all, no.
No.
And just go, river living. And just go, actually, that doesn't sound great. Maybe not.
You don't pay council tax.
Do you not?
I think because it's not a permanent dwelling.
But
you do have to pay
if they
mooring
come after you,
rights.
just drive off very slowly, and they can walk after you for as long as they can be bothered. But it's not. Yeah,
you have to say, if you're coming at me, can you give me an hour's grace so I can just strike up the old diesel?
Yeah, I'm just going
putt my way out really sadly.
Just need to... They're coming, go!
My gosh, you're walking faster than the boat, going, listen, I know where you're going. We will find you.
Yes. Well, I know where you're going. You're going over there. No, I'm not. I could go to Birmingham if I wanted to.
No.
Give me a few weeks.
I was going to say, yeah. And then they'll hatch a cunning plan in his completely stoned state of like, if I paint the barge a different colour, they'll think it's a different barge. so you get all
just
your
paint the side that's closest to the bank.
That's right, the bank side, because you haven't got enough time or money for paint. So you get all your mates round and a load of no-name cider, and you go, let's do that side orange. Yeah, brilliant, done.
Noi, I've got a few bits of business that I need to pick up from last week's podcast. Well, the first one is Miami Vice.
Yeah.
Ooh, you've created a sensation with that. We've had so many messages from people either going, yeah, I've watched Miami Vice in recent memory and Johnny's right, it's brilliant. Or people going, oh, wow, I'm going to start watching Miami Vice. Or even people going, I have started watching Miami Vice. Johnny was right, it's brilliant. So the headline is, you were right. Miami Vice is apparently brilliant. I'm afraid I haven't started watching it yet, but it's on my list.
Well, I can say that I think I messaged you last night. Last night I started Series 2, and the excitement is building. In the first episode of the second series, they go to New York City.
Ooh.
Where they don't really fit in because they're wearing Miami clothing.
Oh, yeah. What is this? They're just pointing at their tans.
There's
sick?
There's a lot of that stuff going on, and there was a bit of wollarding. I might have taken a still photo.
Oh, you sent me that screen grab, yes.
Yeah, now foreign visit.
Linen wollarding?
Linen wollarding, yeah. So
Miami wollarding.
So if you're not British, if you're listening to this from a different country, you probably wonder what the hell wollarding is. Well, it's a colloquialism for one of the very first Top Gear presenters. Off of was it the 70s or was it mostly the 80s?
I think 80s mostly, yeah.
A chap called William Woolard, who was a long-standing presenter, and he used to love walking up to a car and putting his foot on the tyre or the bumper didn't it, whilst talking to camera.
Yeah.
And hence...
Well, we've talked about William Willard in the podcast before because of his infamously nonsensical...
Oh, of course.
Piece to camera.
Of course.
Basically and Nottingham.
Basically and Nottingham, which I have to listen... When you made that remix, that was quite funny, actually. I had to listen to his original signing off piece to camera just to try and understand where he was going with it.
But he's not. Where he's going with it is back to the bar.
He is not going anywhere with that. I mean, it's just all words thrown into a pot in different...
It really is. It's watching somebody on a balance bar and you know they're about to fall off, but they're doing a bloody good job of looking like they're going to regain their balance by waggling their arms about a lot. But no, he's going over. Which, of course, in TV presenting terms means until then, see you then, drive safely, good night. That's how he finally topples off the bar. Goes,
until then, see you then.
Yeah, it's just nonsense. Anyway, we've covered that one, but yes, Willarding as in putting your foot up on, well, usually in his case, the bumper or the tyre of a car. But,
yeah.
Don Johnson was doing it on some railings in that shot you sent me.
Sonny Crockett was walking through the city at night trying to think over how they were going to do this big drug deal without getting shot and killed.
Right.
And which is,
it's a common
obviously a heavy thoughts on the mind. So he was relentlessly smoking whilst walking around the neon lit city. And he had one espadrille up on the railing overlooking the sort of the Hudson River, I think it was, out to all the skyscrapers, and the song "You Belong to the City" by Glenn Fry was playing. That's the first time I think it's been on The Vice, but have to say, it was really good fun. We're still in the Ferrari or faux Ferrari Daytona era. We haven't gone to the Testicle Rossi yet.
But now, I looked this up when I was doing the show notes for the last podcast, and I seem to remember it said that the Daytona gets blown up in the second series, or is it the third? Maybe it's the third.
I think it is the second series, but I've only watched 1.5 episodes, and then I went to bed. So I'm not the oracle. I'm not the oracle on these things yet.
And the story, I sort of scanned over some stuff about this. The story that they wanted a Ferrari said no. They got the fake Daytonas, which were based on Corvettes.
Yeah.
And then
the series
Ferrari
was a huge
came
success.
Back around. Yeah, I guess I see it as a series of big hits. And Ferrari went, okay, we want in on this, and gave them some Testarossas.
I think that's exactly what happened. I never found out whether Don Johnson or... now, what's the chap's other name? Is it Michael Paul Thomas or Michael?
Yes, is it?
Who's very cool, I have to say. He's actually cooler than Sonny Crockett. I was thinking to myself last night, because there was another ever so slightly embarrassing nightclub scene, and I did think... in a nightclub scenario, definitely Tubbs is cooler than Crockett. I would say.
Philip Michael Thomas.
Philip Michael Thomas, that's it. He doesn't smoke, whereas obviously Crockett is a massive smoky enthusiast. So,
right, okay. Interesting.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, anyway, you're listening to Britain's leading Miami Vice podcast.
And always a white cigarette, Never an orange filter, always pure white. And a little bit of licking the filter before you start the strike up, which I don't...
Minty cigarettes?
I don't know. Or is it just to match the jacket? I don't know. Colour-coded.
Oh, that's it. Maybe yes. It's amazing that the end of the cigarette paper isn't rolled up to expose the tobacco underneath, like his jacket sleeves.
You're making it sound like the old arch liner. The old.
I just looked up Philip Michael Thomas because I was wondering what else he did, and the answer is not a huge amount. I think Miami Vice was his sort of.
I think it was one of those things where it was so successful it probably became typecast. I mean, Don Johnson did to a point for a long time.
I guess so, yeah. Guess how many children Philip Michael Thomas has?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Well,
this is Wikipedia, so it might be wrong.
4.
But bloody hell. 11.
What?
That's what it says here.
He's got 11 children.
Well, it also says here, under the personal life bit of his Wikipedia page, it says Thomas is a vegetarian, non-smoker and non-drinker, so he's freed up a lot more time for shagging.
Is that what it actually says?
No, I'm speculating.
Right.
If you're not having a glass of wine and feeling a bit tired, you're probably in the mood to get it on 11 times. And,
Gosh, so there's been some serious pistoning going on in his time.
So it says in 1986, Thomas married Cassandra Green. They have 5 children together. In 1998, they divorced. Thomas has 11 children in total. It sort of goes a bit vague there, doesn't it?
I love that. Yeah, there's quite a lot more than 5. So can we hear this?
Just say 11. That sounds impressive, doesn't it?
So many birthdays and Christmas situations to deal with. Gosh,
it's also again. This is Wikipedia, so I can't. You just don't know, do you? But it claims there's a term for performers who have won all 4 of the major American performing arts awards: the Emmy, the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony. And if you've won all 4, you're now referred to as an EGOT.
What? That's awful. That sounds awful.
Yeah, it does sound like a baby of something else. But Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. So, I mean, there could have been a Toge. There's lots of things you could have done. Giot. Anyway, but apparently
Eniot Grenadier. I think Jim.
Yes.
Jim he's just bought it. He's just bought it.
They're claiming that he came up with that.
What? Because he won them all?
No, he didn't. But it says again. This is Wikipedia, so
I don't know why are we even quoting Wikipedia.
I don't know why we're doing this. The EGOT acronym was coined by actor Philip Michael Thomas in late 1984 when his role on Miami Vice brought him instant fame, and he stated a desire to achieve the EGOT within 5 years. There we go.
I wonder if he did. He is cooler, and anyway, we've probably talked enough about the Vice.
I think we might have done. Anyway, that's one of the things I want to pick up from last week. Just that you have started a mini Miami Vice boom. People revisiting that show
40 years later.
40 years later. So join us again next week when we're going to talk about Quantum Leap or something. Anyway, actually, no, hang on. When are we in Bristol?
I'm going to watch Desperately Seeking Susan and see what that's all about.
Oh, wow, she's not that bad. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to just stitch back to last week was lots and lots of people got in touch to say, when we were talking about Paul Hollywood's Great British Bodge Off using baking materials to badly repair cars.
Edible body repairs, yes.
Edible body repairs, and I said, you can make a backlight out of jelly. Well, that was done, as was the whole thing, when that Skoda advert where they made a Fabia out of cake.
Yes, and I'd totally forgotten about that as well.
I'd totally forgotten about that.
I felt like such an amateur.
I know. Yeah, well, it's ironic. Stuff. In a week when we were talking about how the memory is fallible, we then forgot something extremely memorable that was totally pertinent to what we were discussing. But yeah, so I'll put the link for the Skoda ad in our show notes for patrons. But yeah, it's an excellent ad, and with the tagline was. See, now I can't bloody remember the tagline, but I think it was something like the Skoda Fabia full of good stuff.
Oh,
something
you can
like
now
that.
Have your cake and eat it and all
the
that.
The Skoda Fabia, it's fucking delicious. There's something. It was along those lines. Sweet car. And the pack shot was just the cake car. They were just pouring an enormous vat of custard over the top of it. Sweet car.
And then if it was American market, there'd be 3 asterisks. Warning, can contain cancer if you eat too much of it. 2, you will get fat and you probably will die. 3,
car should not be eaten. Do not eat car.
This is not sugar. This is sucralose something.
Yeah. May cause fecal urgency and death. I love fast small print on American ads. It's really takes the shine off.
Warning, this car may not be a car. If you buy it and it's a car, that's great. But if it's not a car, don't come running to us because it's a litigious society.
Do not drive around a cake. We were told off by someone for our pronunciation. Going badly. Pronunciation. That's what a friend of mine used to do when she worked at the BBC. The BBC, there used to be the pronunciation department. You could ring them up and go, I've got this word here, putting in a script, don't know how to say it. They were great. I always imagined I used to ring them occasionally. Yeah. It was one of those things. I'm sure it's been disbanded now, but it was one of those sort of fabulous throwbacks to when the BBC was entirely self-sufficient, sort of everything was in-house. And, you could just ring this number. And I imagined in my head, they were in a sort of wood-panelled room somewhere. I'm sure they weren't. I bet they're in a really grotty 60s office and TV centre, but always very sort of quite well-spoken, very erudite people. Someone else on the phone, he'd say, I just want to check, it's spelled like this. And they would go, oh, that's a good one. Can we ring you back in 5 minutes? But they would always start by going, is it broadcast critical?
Oh,
Because if you were Hugh Edwards and you were going, look, I'm doing a bulletin in 30 seconds and I'm not sure how you pronounce Kandahar, they would get straight on
critical.
it. Broadcast critical.
So if you just phoned them up
Yeah.
and just went, look, I'm stuck for a word, and they'll go, I'll stop you there.
Yeah.
Nonce.
Broadcast critical. What about litotes? Would that do? How? We've always enjoyed boysenberry.
Boysenberry, yeah.
It was the same if you rang the IT department of the BBC. You know, my computer's not working. Is it broadcast critical? And after this had happened to me a few times, I was tempted to go, well, yes, because we're trying to make a TV show. But what they meant is, you know, if you were literally about to do Newsnight, they would probably try and get their asses over there to sort it.
Is it like Mission Impossible? You don't know which wire to clip,
yeah.
and you've got 40 seconds left.
Is it broadcast critical? Yes. I can't remember. Oh, yes. No, my friend used to say that she would ring the pronunciation department of the BBC and go, hello, is that the pronunciation department? Because it would really piss them off. But anyway, someone said we pronounced the wheels on that Rover Estora incorrectly, because we were saying Ross-style wheels.
Yes.
Not whether they were trims that looked like Ross-styles. This is a person on Twitter whose name, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but they are a scimitar owner. I think they're just called Yellow Scimitar. Anyway,
So she's a princess then, is what you're saying.
yes, your avatar photo looks strangely familiar. Are you on a horse doing so? It should be Rose style because, and I should know this because I put it in one of my boring car trivia books. They're called that because it was Rubery Owen, the sort of
the design
OEM supplier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Rubery Owen company that made the wheels.
Rose styles.
They were called Rubery Owen style wheels, so RO style, and then they just shortened it to Rose style. So, you know, pronunciation-wise, it should be Rose style.
It's funny, I've heard people say that, not often, but I've heard it, and I presumed that we were the right ones and they were the wrong ones. And actually, now we know that we were the wrong ones. Gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Rose styles. I do love them.
Rose styles.
Whatever, you know, you say tomato, I say tomato. Whatever. Great wheel.
Well, I said, yes, I found the name. This chap calls himself Yellow Scimitar on Twitter. Yeah, Yellow Pahoot is his actual handle.
Yellow Pahoot.
Pahoot. Pahoot is the thing that's happened in scimitar circles now. Pahoot stands for Princess Anne had one of those.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Have you never seen
I
this?
did not know that. No.
Yeah, I take
amazing.
issue with this because I think correctly, if you're using that trope, it should be Princess Anne had one of those. It should be Pahootic. But
that sounds better as well. Actually, it sounds like a sort of redesigned head and valve train.
Has that got Pahootic inlets on it? It has actually.
It
yeah.
has.
Yeah. Oh, hey, something else about last week's show. This is just stitch back corner now. But last week I was talking about brazing MGTFs, and then we got into a segment we might call cheap summer fun. Because you were
Z3s
and, you know, we went through and obviously I just sort of discounted MX-5s as being too obvious. Somebody, and I'm so sorry, I can't find the message where this was pointed out. Somebody said, "What about the Mark III MR2?"
Oh, the froggy, the slightly froggy face.
Yeah,
one.
the froggy no boot one, and I was like, "Oh, that was a great car." So I started brazing those, and I discovered that they're. You know, a lot of cars have sort of like one fatal flaw.
Yes.
And if so with MGFs, TFs, everyone just go, head gasket. Your head gasket's going to go. Has your head gasket gone? If it's not gone, it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, so like Porsche 911s of a certain era, it's like, is your bearing, no bearing, or so your bore scores, scored, are they?
Bore scores.
Turns out those MR2s have one fatal flaw, which is the pre-cat. There's a little catalytic converter in the exhaust manifolds, which is to clean up the emissions before the main cats have warmed up. the precats start to break up, and then even though they're in the exhaust manifolds, the engine sucks in some of its own exhaust gases to clean them up.
Oh no!
In certain conditions, and it sucks in little bits of the cat, and then
mulches its engine.
Yeah, but then I found an absolute doozy of an MR2 on Car and Classic, I think it was. Conveniently for our sponsorship purposes, and the guy had made a big thing of it's got an aftermarket manifold on it to remove the pre-cat issues, and so you've got to look for one that's had its pre-cat removed, and then I presume you just make sure when you take it for an MOT it's all warmed up. But yeah, there was an absolute sweet car for I think like $3,500 or something. I just thought, that's a lot of summer fun for relatively little money. I mean, it's no £400 MGTF, but I think those MR2s hold their value a bit better because there's not so many of them, and they're
well made,
kind of sought after.
They're Japanese,
anyway,
so I suppose it would probably just have a bit more. I mean, I wouldn't have one.
You wouldn't?
No.
Why not?
Because it's probably 4 cars I'd want to buy before that, I reckon.
What, Z3 SLK?
Yeah, yeah, I probably would rather have all those. I mean, I think it's a good car. It's just not my bag, really.
Oh, they were so much fun, though. They felt really light. And a little bit... Evo had a long-termer, and when I was used to sub for them, I was up at the office, and then I was going away for the weekend, so I'm like, well, you can take the MR2 if you want. Oh, fucking great, brilliant. A weekend away in a convertible car. And they neglected to mention that the tyres were a little bit worn down because someone had been doing some track work on it or something. And it was sort of, I think it was autumnal times. And
autumnal track work, you say?
No, autumnal track work on Six Music. No, anyway, suffice to say, there's an almost 90-degree bend, but low speed on the way up to Highgate in North London, where I used to live, by the Esso petrol station, if you know the area.
I know the area.
And I was going around there in the damp at all of about 15 miles an hour, and it fucking stepped out unexpectedly and scared the shit out of me because it turned out the tyres were frigged. But otherwise, it was a lovely car. And when it got new tyres on it, it was even nicer. So I've got a bit of a thing for those. I think they're good.
Well, if you're talking about long-termers in that kind of price range, I would step in and go, I think I'd rather have a Smart Roadster. Because we almost certainly mentioned this before on the pod. It's an itch I've never scratched. I remember driving them when they was new, and I know you did more than I did. And
so I had a Brabus Roadster for a year, or almost a year, as a long-termer from either... My first long-term test car, in fact.
Was that your first one? God, that's a cool thing. That's a cool thing.
Well, I'd say... So I never asked for a long-termer because I was a freelancer, and I can't remember at that point whether I was subbing for them or I'd started being an columnist, but I was just up at the office one day, and they went, "Oh, so-and-so's left," and someone who worked on the staff had left the company. They went, "Do you want their Smart Roadster Brabus to run as a long-termer? Because they can't take it with them." And so that's how it came about. I inherited, not quite dead man's shoes, but, so there was a spare car. And so suddenly I had a long-termer, and that was very exciting.
I loved that car. Deceased job spec?
Yes.
What did you call that?
It was vacancy spec.
Yes.
And I had that almost a year, and I mean, it wasn't perfect by any means. The ride was fucking awful. And there's not much you could do about it. I think when I first had that car, I was convinced it was giving me headaches. But then I could never really prove it, and they kind of went away. Maybe my brain just got used to being battered around. But then you realise you were listening to non-stop Helter Skelter and Gabba music in the morning. That was one of the flaws with the Brabus Roadster that people didn't really acknowledge, is that the stereo was just jammed on Gabba FM and at high volume. It was a fabulous little car in so many ways. So but I don't know.
Stop looking at Gabba music now. It's so ridiculous.
I know, it's just the most moronic. I made that bloody Gabba version of our theme tune, didn't I? We played out with a while ago because we were talking about Gabba. stick it on the end of this.
Yeah.
It's Coronation Weekend. I mean, what could be more respectfully regal than a Gabba version podcast theme tune? Happy Coronation, Your Majesty.
Actually, yeah, we must come on to talking about King Charlie and all that.
Yeah.
But continue.
But no, Smart Roadster, because I wanted to ask you about this. So you have got wind of interesting Smart Roadster opportunity.
Well, these things come to me, Richard. But I was filming the other week, a couple of weeks ago, in Europe's most advanced salvage yard, and it was really exciting. I had a hell of a time there because I was just fascinated by this new process. It is as far away from the old scrapyards that you can imagine. There was no geezer in a porter cabin smoking with a dangerous dog, and he didn't just point to the end of the yard and say, "I think what you want's down there somewhere on the left. Can't remember if it's been smashed up or not."
Have they now got like a robotic Alsatian on a chain?
Honestly, it's so... Well, A, it's quite clean. B...
What?
Yeah, like everything's on a database. It's all data driven. So cars come in, they instantly get a QR code. Their history is constantly tracked back from any part that's dismantled. So you can take 200 parts off the car. You'll still be able to trace it back to what that car was, its VIN, what accident it was in, or what scenario it was to do with. So it's like this sort of aero industry was, or has been for years, where everything is trackable always.
That's useful.
Oh, it's brilliant. And they'll buy the cars that they've bought because they know that they are worth it to either weigh in for just metals and other materials, or they'll know exactly what bits they're going to take off that car before it's even come off the transporter. And then it goes through all these incredible processes. I mean, they refilter all of the fuels that come out of it and save them, and they sell it back to their staff at a discounted rate, and then they run the cranes and a couple of the forklifts on the diesel, with the ones that haven't been converted to electric. Yeah, they've got a solar farm on the roof that powers the crusher. The car crusher is fully electric, and then the rest of most of the yard is indoors, and it runs on a factory. You know, like a factory assembly line where you have rails or lines, as they call them, don't they? And you have teams of people that do a certain job, move it on to the next group, certain job, move it on to the next group. This is exactly how the dismantling process works. So they've reversed the assembly line idea for end-of-life cars.
Brilliant.
And there's natural end of life, and then there's like unnatural end of life cars, which made me laugh because it just sounds so.
It's all slightly humanising, isn't it?
It is very cute.
Way,
you go. So hang on, natural end of life, right? So old car, loads of MOT failures, can't be bothered to repair it, or whatever. Unnatural end of life. 3-year-old Mini Cooper goes down the road on its roof because someone did something wrong. We followed the process of like dismantling a couple of quite new cars that were unnatural end of life, and just watching how this all unravels. And it's they can dismantle a car right from it coming off the transporter to being in boxes on a shelf like an Amazon warehouse in like 6 hours.
Really?
Yeah, I kid you not.
Crikey.
I've seen it happen. They've got photo booths with all that they photograph the parts in that get packaged up, weighed, put on a shelf. There's 70,000 parts on a shelf that are all logged by GPS forklift trucks, so they know where everything is. And they've all arranged the parts according to their weight and size of the boxes that they're in. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I have to say, I don't know if anyone else is interested in it, but I wanted to share it.
No, I find this really interesting. Would they have a tiny little rubber bung for the fuel filler flap on a Fiat Panda? Because mine's missing, and it means that the flap doesn't sit flush with the exterior of the car.
I know the ones. Are
they generic, do you think?
That'll be a Fiat generic part, almost certainly. But they will have
Yeah.
it. They will probably have it.
I've tried searching, and it's like I feel like I'm going to have to buy a whole fuel filler flap, which I don't think is very expensive, but it's annoying because I don't need a whole fuel filler flap. I just need a tiny little rubber bung.
If you want, I can have
it sit properly.
Well,
So you can speak to your people.
I can speak to my people.
I've got people.
The salvage yard's called Charles Trent, Vehicle Recycling Limited.
Charles Trent. It sounds more like a painting restorer.
Oh well,
Charles Trent.
Hey.
Oil works, a speciality.
Do you know what? They've been in the business since 1926, taking cars apart.
Really?
Yeah, way.
Wow.
Way.
That's
They've got photos going back to the same yard that we were in when there were just pre-war cars just languishing all over this field in pieces. And so you look at what was a 100-year-old scrapyard, it's ridiculous.
So when they're doing this dismantling, I mean, it's really impressive that they could do it in 6 hours because, I mean, you certainly couldn't build a car in 6 hours, I think. But I guess dismantling. Because what I was wondering is there anything that is sort of notorious for being really hard to take apart?
Oh my gosh!
Like, they go, oh yeah, bloody hell, the bumpers on a frigging 3 Series, they're a nightmare.
Oh,
whatever.
The guys on the line who are trained mechanics, but they obviously have to deal with a different car every single time, and they get 15 to 20 minutes to do their job. Otherwise, a red light starts flashing, and they pretty much get told off.
Ooh, I don't like that.
So they don't have much time. Well, when I say told off, what they do is that if the red light flashes, that means they're out of their allocated time and they need to call for help. So there's a good camaraderie on there. So that one of the other groups of people will come over and help them. But one of them said, what they've all got their pet hates. One of them says trying to get the engines out of French cars is surprisingly hard.
Really?
Yeah. They said there's certain like captive bolts that you can't get to the back of, and they seize, and you end up having to sort of cut the engine out. One guy said, have you ever tried to take the door off a new Beetle? And I said, no, I haven't. And he said the bottom hinge, the bottom bracket for the door, he said you have to take all of the inner wings apart to get to the bolt, because you have to go in through the wheel arch to get to it. And he says it's ridiculous. He says it's ridiculous.
So is that because it's a design thing that's led to that?
Yeah. So he said we do,
front wings.
Yeah, and they're quite desirable parts, the doors, for second-hand reuse. So so they were telling us all about this, and we had a 2019 Mini Cooper in that hadn't done many miles. It had gone down the road on its roof, and it had loads of salvageable bits, and one of those bits were the rear light clusters, and they'd never taken the light clusters out of a Mini that new, so they were learning on the job. And you had to take an enormous amount of stuff out to get to because you can't force it, because you don't want to damage the plastic tabs, because if you damage it, then it can't be the sort of certified grade A part that they want it to be, and then you can't charge the money you want to charge, or insurance companies won't use it. Because this was the part of the story that insurance companies are using more and more certified green parts, as they call it. So it's been fully inspected. It's an OEM part, that much off a real car. And it's gone through various people to prove that it is what it is, and it will fit perfectly well. And in a world where post-pandemic supply issues are a nightmare, but also there's a lot. You and many people listening to this will probably know that pattern parts can be awful. There's a real patchy quality of pattern parts. So sometimes it's better the devil you know. You go, all right, my Fiat 100 horsepower Panda's got a stoved-in tailgate. I want a real OEM Panda tailgate. I don't want a pattern part.
I don't want some shit that turns out to be a parallelogram and won't go in.
Well, no, because I'm
finding this with the top mounts, actually, because I said I need a new top mount on my Panda on the front strut, and
top knot.
Top knot, yeah, because it's a very metrosexual car, and I was talking to someone who knows their stuff, and they just went, don't fall for it and get the cheapo pattern ones. Off, the car parts sites where they'll just list lots of the same part with different makes, and you just went, don't get tempted by the cheapo ones. Spend a little bit more and get these ones, because they're just better.
It's absolutely true. I'm about to do this with a Honda.
But do you know what? Someone was telling me, who knows their stuff in this area was telling me this is what is feeding the thefts of Range Rovers en masse, is because insurance companies in the past few years have increasingly insisted on used parts to repair damaged Range Rovers, because Land Rover parts are very expensive. And so a stolen Range Rover can be parted out and sold for a lot of money in bits, and that's what makes it worthwhile, more than the equivalent X5 or ML or something. A Range Rover or Sport is an extremely valuable asset as a box of or crates of parts, and so that's why they're getting nicked. Once they were nicked and sent abroad, now they're just nicked and stripped, and then fed into the system, because there is great demand for high quality used Range Rover bits, because insurance companies are now telling garages not to buy new OEM stuff because it's so fucking expensive.
Well, there
so
we
I
go.
was told.
It's true. It's a big problem. Yeah, big problem. Anyway, there is a video. By the time you listen to this cast, there's a video where I walk around this scrapyard. So they don't like calling it scrapyard, a vehicle dismantler, vehicle recycling centre, whatever.
They need to go private ambulance on this, don't they, and come up with an especially euphemistic title for
private ambulance.
Vehicle.
Forgot about the private ambulance.
Yeah, it's a dead body van, isn't it? No, it's a private ambulance. We just painted it black because we like it. We're goths.
An ambulance incites that the person has a chance of getting better.
Yes.
No, this person's
private.
This
Private
person's
changes
not
everything.
breathing. What are they with Booper? Yes, they're going straight to a Booper place where they'll get revived. That's what's going to happen.
So maybe this scrapyard should be called a private garage.
Oh yeah.
So you're a garage. You fix cars.
Not quite.
Yes, but in private. Don't look in here. You won't like it. Oh my God! You've taken it apart. That sounds fascinating.
It's really
enjoy
good.
watching that.
And also,
that's cool.
It's just bizarre how they can do same day or next day delivery on parts.
Well, the main thing I need is top mounts, so I think I'll go new for those.
Yeah.
But if they've got a fuel filler flat bung, I am all over them. Particularly
are in.
Unless it turns out that it's like 90 quid or something, in which case I'll just put a bit of black tack in there and we'll be fine.
Just use a licorice all sort.
Yeah.
And some spray mount.
Oh, Christ. I've just remembered.
What? What's the matter?
It's such a stupid thing. I just remembered in the glove box of my Panda, I think there's still some licorice all sorts, but also I was on my way somewhere like 2 weeks ago now, and I stopped at just like a little village shop to get something to drink, and I couldn't resist. They still had hot cross buns, even though this was after Easter, and I love a hot cross bun. So I bought a 4-pack of hot cross buns. I ate 2 of them during my journey, and the other 2 are still in the glove box. They're probably hard enough to be used. I'll just break a bit off and use it as a fuel flat bung now.
A bit of really hard hot cross bun.
Yeah. Do you not like hot cross buns? I can't resist.
Do you know what? I don't like the orange skin.
Oh
no, can't do the orange skin.
No, but that's one of my favourite bits. I
Is
like
it?
that, and I like that roulette sense that you don't know quite what you're going to get. You might get a bit of the orange stuff. Bit of
I
raisin
used
or
to like the taste, but I used to detest striking a segment of orange skin. So what I used to do, I used to actually dissect hot cross buns. If Mum gave me one, I would cut it open, then cut it open again, then cut it open again, and I would take carpaccio of hot cross bun to just see if I could see. If I took some cross sections of it, I'd know where all of the mystery rogue pieces of orange peel were. I know I'm an idiot and complete flute,
okay.
absolute stroker of a man. I'm not fussy anymore.
Well,
just so you
good.
know, I'm not fussy anymore.
No, see, I am. Unfortunately, it's a constant pain in the arse. Quite frankly, I wish I wasn't, but I am.
I know, guys.
Deal with
listen.
it. Guys,
So, I know. We were going to talk about the salvage yard because while we were at the salvage yard, right, there was this huge amount of racking on one side of the yard outside. And I said, well, what are those cars doing over there? Because they're not being dismantled. He said, those are either being processed by the insurance, so they haven't. There's a dispute, or they haven't decided if the car's going to be written off, or it's not written off. It's going to be going through a salvage auction where it can be repaired and gone back on the road. So I was looking around there, and then the magpie in me, a car pervy magpie, I saw a glint of paintwork, and I went, oh, right on the top shelf, so it's really high, was a Smart Roadster Brabus in this really vivid kind of green, and I went, bloody hell, look at that, what's the score? And I actually made a couple of excuses over the course of the day to walk over there. But it was so high up I couldn't get to it. It's like as high as a pylon. I was like, I'm not going up there. So I said, what's the crack with the... I wrote down the registration number, and the chap who was showing me around, the COO, said, I can see you're interested. He said, I'll go on the database and I'll let you know, but I'll email you. And he emailed me the day after I got home. He sent me this email and said, I've done a bit of research, and it turns out that the insurance have decided to not repair it, but it's a Brabus, and it's got some mysterious electrical issues, and the roof doesn't work very well. But he took it down off the ramp and cleaned it to take pictures of it to send to me, which is really lovely. And he said it will be for sale, and we can probably do you a keen deal. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. So I don't know the ins and outs, but rest assured, the car magpie in me is fighting to get out and go, look, it is a car that I've always liked. That much we know. And so I'm going to see. Yeah. I'm going to see.
It's quite you as well, because it's sort of, small and lightweight, and so quite efficient, and, not... I know you like, because you've got your insight, and you like a kind of intriguing coupe.
I do. And the phone, unfortunately, hasn't rung from Dr. Gordon Murray yet. And so, because I'm still waiting for the Murray to phone me up and go, I've still not done anything with my Smart Roadster coupe. I'm a busy guy. I've got T50, T33, blah, 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 etc., etc. So can you, why don't you take it on, and then I'll have a drive of it now and then. Please don't do anything stupid with it, like put a small block iron Chevy V8 in it. And
I don't think there'd be any room left for you.
No,
they are really small.
They are very small, which is what makes them a great thing, right? They're a great piece of packaging.
Yeah, it is.
So the dream is for the phone to ring and Gordon to go, I know you keep asking about it. You can buy it off me on the proviso that if you ever sell it, I'll have it back, or something.
Do you know what? I've got a VW ID5. Press car at the moment. It's an annoying car.
Yeah.
And it did that thing. I watched, by the way, your Auracat sort of sum up after your few months with it. It was really good.
Oh, did you like that?
Yeah, very honest.
I was trying to be honest.
Respected your honesty. Yeah, that's the thing. And so, you weren't doing a hatchet job. You said what was good about it, but you also pointed out that it's got some, what sound like some fairly major flaws. But I was thinking about this when I was driving the ID5, because you were saying about the Auracat having this sort of ridiculously intrusive lane keep and things, and just all the systems, the safety systems, not being sort of calibrated quite as well as they should be.
That's right. I
was driving on a very narrow road, like you can only get one car through between parked cars either side, downhill, and it curves, as a lot of streets around here do.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, the ID5 decided to slam on the brakes.
Really?
But it only did a dab. It did a hard dab. Imagine you sort of punched the brake pedal as hard as you could and then just let off again, because that's what it did. It clearly realised the error of its ways immediately. But it scared the shit out of me, because it's like, boom, and red things start flashing on the dashboard, and then it let off. But when it comes from nowhere, on a road I've driven down 1,000 times, and I know perfectly well I'm not going to crash, it's got a sort of funny curvature, and, it looks like you're going to drive into a parked car, perhaps, to an idiot computer, but you're not. And I was perfectly in control of the car, so fuck off, Volkswagen. It was infuriating. It's just such an irritating car. There's so many things that are just not quite right about it. And then I got into
It's also got
a
a Beetle back, hasn't it? Hasn't it got a...
It's a horrible looking car, I think.
It's one of those...
apart from the wing that cuts the back window, which is quite stylish, but otherwise it's just a lump and oaf of a car. And
it's my least favourite genre of vehicle, as we now know.
Yeah, that's it. It's a dickhead genre of car, and it's a particularly weak example of that. And I got back into our E-Up, and it's just so much more user-friendly, and it's also small. And this is what I was going to say, is I've just realised at the moment I'm absolutely in love with small cars. I just like being able to, put them places. I got into a parking space you would not credit the other day in my Panda. It's just like full kind of squeeze it in with Vaseline. And I thought, so Smart Roadster would fit in that.
You've been jackknifing your way in, have you?
Yeah.
you want a bit? Do you want a
Anyway.
bit of goose fat with that, or are you okay?
Yeah,
I've got funny.
dirty bastard.
Funny you should say that.
One of them steam rally.
Do you know we get sent a lot of steam rally?
Oh my god!
related-
And we're into the season now, aren't we? We're fully into the
Oh,
season.
it's amazing.
Of people sending us static engines.
I had a really good one the other day with a pulsing water pipe. Did you?
Is that the one? No, which was the one with the skeleton on it that I just thought was just properly creepy? And
Oh
horrible?
yeah, that was my mate from college, Jody. He went to a steam rally, classic car event type thing in Somerset, and he said, "Oh, you'll like a bit of this with the podcast." And it was a stationary engine running an alternator that was then running something else. I can't actually remember, but it was a skeleton on a children's tricycle.
Horrible.
It was a bit.
Just
But the one I found was a stationary engine running a water pump, which was filling, I don't know, a huge receptacle and then trickling back round to another receptacle. But the water pump was attached to a huge flexible pipe. And because it was a big piece of flexible pipe, every time the stationary engine chugged and pumped, the whole pipe just flexed across the floor like a spasm. It was a particularly sexual stationary engine saga, and it just made me go. We need to hold our own steam rally Roggen event. I feel we need to get. Well, I'm going to take you to one, and I'm going to give you some loads of supermarket cider, and you can wear braces over the top of your shirt.
Oh, can I?
Yes,
Great.
Yes, you can, and
a Fred Dibner hat.
Yeah, and I'm going to wear rigger boots and a train driver's cap. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. We should start to wrap this up, but before we do, important announcement. We were talking belatedly last week about our next live show in Bristol. That's all sold out now.
Thanks
so
to everyone.
I'm afraid tickets. Yeah, thank you to everyone
who's bought a
for the
ticket.
Bristol show. We will see you there. In where are we now? In next week, isn't it? Well, so yes, it'll be on the 19th. But you know that if you bought a ticket, or I hope you do. We'll see you there. Thank you for buying a ticket. But we've got another live show coming up, and it's in London. So frigging leafy, London town on the 7th of June, Wednesday, the 7th of June,
London.
as part of the London Concourse Show, which is at the Honourable Artillery Company in in kind of the city of London.
Which promises to be a very, very good, well-heeled car event.
Yes. So we'll put all the tickets details on social media, but that's in June, Wednesday, the 7th of June. Smith and Sniff live in London. We hope to see you there.
I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good one, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
We've been talking about doing one in the capital, and we asked King Charlie. He said, "Yeah, make it happen." And
It's fine.
I'll
tell you what,
turn up.
lads. Let me get my coronation out of the way, and then I'll sweep
block
up.
it out
and
the
then
diary.
The city's yours.
Yeah, and then
knock yourself out, lads. He said.
I'll swing by in my A4 All Road. I might have another one by then. Can't say.
Now we should add as well. If you buy a ticket for the live show in London, you will then get emailed a code to get you into the London Concourse event. So you sort of get that thrown in.
So you get
is nice.
so you get to see cars, and then you get to hear us
See cars,
talking
nice
about
cars, so-
almost cars.
Yeah, all out on the lawns, beautiful cars on the vistas, the lovely grass at the Honourable Artillery Company.
No piss vistas, please. It's not that kind of event.
And then you can come indoors to the hall and hear us talking bobbins. So that's all next month. Hope to see you there if you're in London or the southeast, or you can be bothered to travel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I'll be. We are awful. I'll come down in probably a heavily body-fitted Mitsuoka Vute, and I'll put it on in the concourse.
Yeah.
I won't be invited back again.
Well, I I was hoping to come in the Vute because you'd be there in an insurance write-off Smart Roadster with chronic electrical problems.
Oh, yes, I do apologise. Yes, you take the Vute on that particular one. And
bits of baguette falling out of the bodywork where I've badly patched it up and then iced over it.
Well, Paul Hollywood is
all right.
invited. If he wants to do some marzipan roof gutter repair, he's more than welcome.
All right, then. Well, that's that for this. But before we go, I have 3 things to tell you. They are: 1, Johnny has a solo YouTube channel. It's called the Incubate Corncrakes Show, in which Johnny tries to help endangered migratory birds by keeping their eggs warm. This week he's in the Outer Hebrides squatting over a nest again. If that's not to your taste because it's absolute dog shit, then there's of course the Late Break Show, an excellent YouTube channel full of videos about cars and people who love them. Auracat, check out the Auracat.
And advanced salvage yard scenarios.
And the salvage yard as well, yes. That's I'm going to look forward to watching that. Second thing I've got to tell you, we've done the live shows, haven't we? So, I've got books out, yes. Boring Car Trivias, 1, 2 and 3. 4 on its way, but only if you buy more of the first 3. Otherwise, I just won't be bothered. And the third thing I've got to tell you is that Bryan Adams signed his first record deal for $1.
What?
A&M Records. This is 1979. A&M Records, I think they wanted Bryan Adams' songs, and as a sort of token gesture, they signed him as an artist in his own right for a symbolic $1. But then brilliantly, Bryan Adams became a global superstar and made them a lot of money. But also, he insisted that they actually gave him his $1. And apparently he still has the check for $1.
Oh, the man of principle.
Yeah, love it.
Well, what was the album cover where he was sitting on his Land Rover County?
Oh, yes.
It's pre-Defender, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it was.
And it's on white Wellers, which
know.
always offended me. I always thought, he's got enough money to buy better quality wheels. I just want to put that out there.
Hang on, let's have a look. What was that album called? Hang on. Bryan Adams' Land Rover. Here we go.
It was back 91. It was Prince of Thieves era.
I think but was it a greatest hits? This looks like it's the greatest hits because it starts with Summer of '69 and then it's got Run to You and
okay.
Can't Stop This Thing We Started and stuff like that. On the back cover, certainly he's sitting on the top of it.
Is it?
It is. Yeah, it's a pre-Defender.
So it's a
90.
Is it County?
Can't see because they put some small print over the doors where the stickers might be. It doesn't look like it.
Is it on white letter tyres?
Who knows?
White letter tyres.
There's another photo of him. I can't see the tyres. That must be a different photo. But there's a photo of him here where he's got...
He probably listens to the podcast. Brian, if you're listening, white letter tyres and white Wellers. And is it a County and have you still got it?
It looks like he's also got... I think he's got a Series 2.
We need to know about Bryan
anyway,
Adams.
I seem to have slightly got distracted by
Bryan Adams' Land Rover first.
Possibly one for a later date. Anyway, that's quite enough of that for now. But thank you ever so much for listening. We'll be back doing this all again next week. But until then, goodbye.
Bye now. Until then, goodbye. Bye-bye. In the words of Bryan Adams, cannot stop this thing we've started. And all that. Yeah.
That does sort of apply to this podcast.
What about another massive hit, Summer of '69 on that side of things? Yeah.
Everything I do, brackets, I do it for you, double brackets, basically a Nottingham.
That's just brilliant. That's brilliant. Oh, gosh.